Hey there, I'm Robert Dempsey with Life for the Freelancer, and last night I was reading this book to my daughter. It's called Hip Hip Hooray for Annie McRae by Brad Wilcox, and at first when I got into it, it told the story of a little girl, Annie McRae, and every morning she would wake up and she would be very happy and her mom would cheer her on, and then she'd have breakfast and her dad would cheer her on, and she'd go to school and her teachers would cheer her on, and she'd come back home and then her grandma would cheer her on because she was always very happy, very outgoing, very motivated to do her things. And then it says, one day then Annie woke up and her mother wasn't there to cheer her on, and she went to breakfast and her dad was busy working. And when I saw that, I immediately started feeling guilty, and I'm like, oh crap, where's this book? Where's this book going? And then went to school, and her teacher was busy, and came back home, and her grandmother was sleeping, and Annie McRae got really, really sad. But then she woke up the next day, the following day, and her mother, while not being there, she was in the shower. Still, Annie, she didn't get sad that day. In fact, she said the little cheer for herself inside her head, and she did the same thing when she went to breakfast because her father was already at work, and she went to school and again did the same thing and came back and again did the same thing with her grandmother. And then at the end of this is a spoiler alert now if you're gonna go read the book, but then at the end of this book she said her grandmother, who was hard of hearing, said, oh, what did you say after Annie let out a big cheer for herself? And she says, oh, nothing, shouted Annie. Grandma, how was your day? And now this is a children's book, but by the time I got to the end of it, I really kind of came back to a very important lesson for all of us self-employed folks, and that is one of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Now, intrinsic motivation, right, and that's a big word, and I don't want to insult your intelligence by telling you what it means, but essentially it's internal, right? It's what's internally motivating you versus extrinsic, which is what's out there in the greater world motivating you. And the lesson of this little children's book here is that we cannot always rely on that extrinsic motivation. We have to have that spark inside of us, that just internal happiness that really keeps us going. And I think this is extremely valuable for self-employed folks, because if you're on your own, you don't always have any external folks there cheering you on every day, saying how good of a job that you're doing. Now, I do feel that it's important to get some extrinsic motivator, so go to a co-working space and talk with people there and tell them what you're doing, or join in on some online forums and talk to the folks there and get feedback on what you're doing. But ultimately what it comes down to with self-employed folks is that it takes a lot of self-motivation, a lot of self-management to keep going. And all of the folks that I've spoken with really have that spark inside of them that gets them going through thick and thin, that internal drive to just keep going. And there are a lot of reasons for that, and we'll cover those in upcoming videos. But if now I'm not saying go out and get this book, but just think about what is it that motivates you? What is it internally that keeps you going, working sometimes extremely long hours or days, holidays when other people are out having fun, but you're cranking it out, you're kicking it out. Right? So what is it that motivates you? Let me know in the comments. I'm really interested to hear your feedback on the lesson that's from this book and what gets you going. So I'm Robert Dempsey with Life for the Freelancer, and I'll talk with you later. Thanks.